So first of all, we had a lot of questions about how you connect in the first place if you have a church building which doesn't have good broadband, etc. So if I could go around in order again and just ask each of you panelists to just say what you might use or how you might approach it if you don't have good connectivity. Andy, first of all to you.
Okay, so if you've got no broadband in the building as such, probably my first port of call would be to look at 4G. Unfortunately, you don't necessarily get great signal strength in church locations, especially in the rural ministries. But 4G is perfectly capable of supporting the bandwidth. There are things we can do by using external aerials on the church or hidden away somewhere to get a better signal. And obviously, you've got height to your advantage with churches mostly. Apart from that, the other options we've looked at with other people is to find somebody that does have good broadband locally who is a member of the church possibly. And there is a possibility of using a wireless link to that person's property as long as you've got line of sight. So there are various options that we can use, but obviously the most ideal is if you get broadband straight into the building.
Okay, thanks, Andy. That's great. And Jason, what would you say? I know you obviously will send to church.
Yeah.
Any tricks?
Yeah, to be honest, a dongle, to be honest. So I'm sure this has never happened, but our internet went down one Sunday, which is a little bit scary. So we rushed up to the mobile phone shop, got a dongle and plugged it in. We did a whole live stream via dongle. And it actually seemed to work. So yeah, so it is that reliance on 4G, to be honest. Or say, you know, as Andy says, if you can, you know, use someone else's Wi-Fi, that's really good. But of course, from your mobile phone, it is really easy. You know, if you do Facebook Live or whatever from your mobile phone, that is easy to do. But yeah, mobile phone connection really to what you do for that.
That's great. And obviously, obviously today is about live streaming and answering those technical questions, but there is always the option to put out something that you've recorded from your church building if you want to be showing your church building. And that's what a lot of churches are doing. So I'll just throw that out there for anyone that's not had a chance to do any of my webinars already, and I can give more sort of help on that aspect of stuff. And can I go to you, Keith? What would you have anything to add to that?
No, I don't think so. Unmuted?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, just to say, no, I don't have anything to offer. I don't think it's not really my area of expertise.
Okay, and Andrew, do you have anything to add?
And just to say that we've made it much easier for churches to apply for faculties and for that faculty process to go through really swiftly if you want to install broadband equipment or associated equipment with broadband. But think of the wireless options as well if you can't get a fixed line.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and Steve, just with your IT hat on, did you want to add anything to that one?
Absolutely. I know from my perspective as a worship leader, having gone to different locations, there's lots of things to think about. 4G, for example, can work brilliantly until 3 more people turn up and they're also trying to use their internet mobile data, and suddenly the signal drops out because you're in a church with big, thick brick walls and you've got no hope anymore. So 4G is a really good option, but make sure it's reliable. One of the other things to think about, and Chloe mentioned it, pre-recording the service. If you record a service beforehand and then broadcast it later, it can feel like you're doing it live, but it also just takes away some of that nervousness of help, I'm being recorded straight away, and it increases the reliability of what you're putting out there.
That's brilliant. I've just had a question posted here by Stella saying, if the wireless link is line of sight, what type of equipment is required? I don't know whether Andy, you might be able to answer that.
Yeah, sure. You don't do it with normal Wi-Fi, that's for sure. Basically, it is a dedicated wireless link. And so there are bits of professional equipment that are actually surprisingly low cost to achieve that, and they will work over several hundred meters. So yes, you can get a very high-speed link. And if you look at a lot of buildings, like local authority buildings, often they have an aerial on the outside because they're linked to a building across the way. So it's a popular and a proven technology.
And find out a bit about kind of that kind of equipment.
Sorry, Chloe, we've lost you again.
Sorry, can you hear me? Andy, or can you clarify whether there's a good website to find out about that kind of equipment?
There's various manufacturers, but if anybody wants to know more about it, they can obviously come through us.
Thank you.
It's not something that you would install yourself, put it that way, not unless you really knew what you were doing.
Thank you, Andy. You might want to post your website.
Sorry, Chloe, I can barely hear you. Can you adjust your sound somehow?
Right, I'm going to hand over to James Grier now to ask the questions, because he might be better at me, and I'm going to post them to him, and I'll keep trying. Okay.
Okay, that's fine. So the next question Chloe just sent me is about basic equipment you need. So do any of the panelists want to just come back with what's the basics to be able to live stream?
Okay, so there's nothing better basic-wise than a mobile phone, because you've got everything in a neat package. So essentially, if you want to live stream with the bare minimum, then a good smartphone is the ultimate accessory, because you don't really need to have any technical knowledge to use it apart from how to work the app that you're running. Everything happens in the background. The only thing I would say is very important to get the sound right. So buy a lapel mic or similar that will plug straight into the side of the phone, and that will improve your sound no end. Remember that sound is the carrier of most of the information in all we're doing in church. Pictures are only supporting most of the time and giving people an atmosphere. So as our friend said earlier, sound, never forget the sound.
Great. Anyone else? I'm not going to ask all of you.
Yeah, I think you know, when you look into live streaming, is you don't need to put so much pressure on yourself about making it the IMAX of Diocese of Exeter. Like, you'll connect, and I think particularly right now is that relational connection, isn't it? Really. So firstly, don't put your pressure on yourself. Sitting, having your mobile phone and just talking to your phone is great. Of course, another great bit of kit that I really recommend, I know a lot of churches have taken up with, is something called a Mevo camera. A Mevo camera is a bit more expensive, but it is a really good, worthwhile investment. I know a lot of churches have taken the plunge with that one, and that one you can actually plug your sound desk into it. And from your mobile phone, you can actually have the full shot, and you can point at people's faces, and the camera will automatically go to their faces, a bit like a multi-shot, really. So it's like having loads of different cameras, but just from one camera, and that seems to work really well. But yeah, certainly, a camera of some sort, of course, if you want to, go for a paid, a proper camera, if you want to call it, you go for that one as well. But essentially, it is that camera, whatever that may be, a mobile phone, whether it is a Mevo or physical camera, and obviously that that internet connection. Obviously, that sound is really, really important. So lapel or whatever that may be, really. But yeah, I would say just a Mevo, MEVO, it's called.
Brilliant.
As I say, just don't put the pressure.
Nick, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, and thank you for allowing me to join you. I'm Rochester and then London Diocese, but I've been streaming from home, which is why you've got. I hope nobody recognises these church hangings behind me. I'm sure they were given to me in all honesty. But I do use my camera on my Mac and my iPhone. And using two cameras I found quite useful is that my iPhone camera looking at me provides, particularly for celebrating, you can see the full movement going on of the altar and mannerisms. But having my Mac next to me with its camera equally provides, one uses its mic, but it provides a close view as well. And when we've been Zooming services, I use a technique, if people use Zoom, called, I think it's Spotlight. Then you can select, it's different to pinning a video. You select Spotlight. And so I've been pulling in people who've been reading and different aspects. And for those who aren't comfortable, and I'm okay with tech, but I'm not a tech person necessarily. Actually, this has been really helpful for me with a little bit of guidance from my children. To do it, because I can then control the slides, and I've been sharing slides. So for some of our services, we have the order of service on there, and that's been really helpful.
Brilliant, thank you, Nick. Just one thing Chloe would say if she had a voice at the moment, which she's told me, is a tripod is a key bit of basic equipment. If you're going to use your phone, don't just hold your phone. because as firm as you think your hand is, it isn't. Okay. Unless any of the other panel wants to say anything, the next question would be, what streaming platform is best? I'm just going to sneak an extra panelist in here. Somewhere hiding in our midst is a young lad who's my son, who's been doing all the stuff for our church. Toby, do you want to just tell us a bit about StreamYard, and then the others can tell us about others?
Okay, so we've been using StreamYard, where you can do both live and recorded services. So you can share videos, so you can share your worship quite easily, and you can have like overlays of worship, and then you can add and remove people quite easily. And it was one of the most simple streaming services we found.
Great. And also it's really, it's quite like Zoom, but Jason Ham probably is the person to tell you more about StreamYard because we nicked it off them.
Yeah, so StreamYard, I say that's just one option. So yeah, you've probably heard, really, you bring people off, and what I would say, it is very cost effective. I think, you know, it really is not an extravagant cost. You're talking, what is it, 20, 30 a month or something like that? I mean, obviously I know there are different budgets here, etc. But, you know, it's definitely worthwhile an investment, I would say. It's
less than £20 a month, and it's free if you don't want to record.
Yeah,
and if you don't want your own church logo. Sorry, yes. Jason, go on.
Yeah, it's great. And, you know, in terms of a platform, you know, I guess it's where you want to broadcast to as well. And it's where your people are at. So, you know, obviously Facebook, a lot of people got that. YouTube. I know we stream to a Church Online platform. So the Church Online platform is free from Life Church in America. Anyone can sign up, it's completely free. That's where you can put a video player. So you can embed a YouTube live into it. It's also an interactive chat room. But there's also something called a live prayer button. So you can have one-to-one prayers, and you know, obviously that's, you know, private ability there, isn't there, really? So, so yeah, whatever platforms. But I would say don't spread yourself too thinly. You know, you know, I know we have 6 online pastors engaging people every Sunday, and we can do that because, you know, we've got lots of different platforms. But you know, focus on one and pinpoint the energies there, and that will, you know, that will give a focus to what it is really. But yeah, Facebook or YouTube is also a good one, isn't it? So.
Great. We're going to move to the other experts just to unpack some of Jason's expecting us to understand stuff. When he says online pastors, what he means is there are different people engaging in the chat down the sides. So they're just people hosting the service in effect, but virtually welcomers. Andy, anything you want to say about platforms?
Yeah, I think it's important to just draw a little line between platforms that are streaming platforms and platforms that are conferencing platforms. So the traditional divider would be a conferencing platform is when you have many participants like we're doing now, and they all have a chance to feed in with live video and text as well. Whereas a streaming platform like Facebook or YouTube is really a one-to-many platform, more like a radio or TV broadcast, where the only feedback really is via text. And I'm not that familiar with StreamYard, but from what Jason just said, it sounds like StreamYard sort of runs down the middle somewhere on that score. Is that correct, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, it can do a lot, really. So it sounds like, I mean, whatever live or pre-recorded content you want, you can feed out of, really. So, so yeah, it does sound very much what you said.
So yeah, just the reason for saying that is that when you're looking at different types of technology to create your stream, there are some options out there where they're only suitable for streaming and some only suitable for Zoom type applications. So it's quite, if you're thinking of using multiple platforms, you need to be careful that the hardware you're looking at will work across all of those platforms.
Brilliant. We're going to open to others. Please do, if people are being left behind in what's being said, if we're presuming knowledge, put it in the chat. We'll slow the speakers down. Also, just in terms of the thing of StreamYard and different platforms, is one is where it's going to, one is about being able to use different people. So if you just record it on your phone or Facebook Live or YouTube on your phone, that's one place. If you've got people in different homes you're trying to draw in, that's where you're bringing in StreamYard, or there's nothing OBS or other ones. Andrew, Steve?
I would just say know your community. Who are the people that you're wanting to reach, and what kind of platforms are they using? So know the community, know the people that you want to reach to. If Facebook users then use Facebook to stream it. If they're kind of going to be connected to Zoom, you know, just know your audience, know the people that you're trying to reach.
Great. Steve, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, just to say, you mentioned OBS software really briefly. OBS is fantastic. It's completely and totally free. It can be used very simply, and I've been using it as a basis for videos. So I've got a Mac in front of me. It's a 5-year-old Mac. It's nothing special. I use the same wall behind me when I'm videoing, and I normally have a little box in the side where I can plug in some sound to it as well, called a Focusrite, and that means that all my sound and all my videos are being recorded by OBS. Using that software, I can then either record it as a video, or the software can be told to send it to somewhere like YouTube or Facebook, and I can then do that live. So it gives me lots of options. What I really like about OBS is that if you want to learn more about it, you can then go from this basic version of it to a really, really complicated BBC level version of it, where everything feels like you're putting logos in corners and titles underneath and making it look really posh, and you can integrate Pro Presenter to put your lyrics on. But the best part is that you don't have to do any of that. When I first started streaming online myself from home, when this lockdown first started, I started by just going onto Facebook Live and seeing what happened. And then I started pushing myself to go further, and I thought, right, now let's try including a camera from here, having a different angle. And by the time I got to having 2 different angles, different recordings of sound, different platforms going out to, I realised within a month I'd overcomplicated it. People weren't quite sure where to go, weren't quite sure what they were watching, and I was spending more time preparing it than I needed to. Whatever system you use, make sure you evaluate it and see if it's appropriate for your church. Is it going to actually reach the congregation that you want it to reach? Is it going to reach the community? Are there people who will never touch Facebook because of fears of security, but will go on YouTube and use that quite happily? If you're using something like Church Online, it's a really easy system. It links nicely to YouTube, so you can actually have it in both places at the same time without doing any extra work. And the whole host thing, having someone there. When I've led worship in the past and gone online to stream, often I'm the only one in the room, and I see the comments coming down the side, and I think to myself, I can't respond to that. When I've led events with other people, having someone there to respond to a comment, having the ability to take someone off to one side and pray with them. We had someone join us from California for one of our sessions. Here we are in little old Plymouth, where I am. I'm leading worship in Ashburton via the internet, and a person from California joins us. And they, within 5 minutes, said, actually, I'm really enjoying this. Can I have some prayer? I couldn't do that because of the situation I was in, but having someone to back you up, that is the key thing. Someone to back you up, to pray over what's going on, to take someone to one side to pray with them, to meet the needs of your community. That's key for me.
The other thing on the live streaming or pre-recording is if you pre-record as if live streaming, you then actually can do that yourself because you're free. You can do it in the name of your church. They don't know it's you both speaking on screen and speaking to them. Okay, just a question to Keith. You may want to say something about platforms, but also somebody's come in saying, can we simultaneously be doing stuff in a live service and also putting it out online? I think one of the core questions for that is going to be around sound. Do you want to come back in?
Yeah, that is a sort of key thing. And I mean, yes, it's doable, but it does need some thinking about. And just picking up on what Steve said, that using a little box like this Focusrite or some other box to plug into the laptop, so that you're not just relying, well, I mean, most laptops these days don't have a mic input anyway, but so you can plug in via a device which will control the level effectively and make sure we're not overloading the system. And also, I would advocate that you have a little mixer that goes into, that plugs into the box and then into the laptop or whatever you're using. Because then you can not only pick up the PA feed or mics that you've stolen from the PA system, but you can also set up a mic to cover the congregation. And as a viewer at home, I would plead for some sense of the congregation, minimal though they may be, being there and me being part of them. So I would suggest, this isn't something that can go on the PA because it would conflict with it. But if you have a little tiny mixer at very little cost, you can feed that into the system with another mic covering the congregation. So I would say, yes, it's entirely doable.
Okay, brilliant. Keith, can you just put in the chat in very simple terms what the box you just held up, for those who are, it kind of passed us by. Next question is, how can churches make sure they look good and sound good without lots of equipment? So we've got our tripod and our phone and that. Yeah, things around, how do you make the most of light? Having recorded the bishop now for a service and put him in a window twice, so the window meant you couldn't see the bishop. How do you make sure you're not that silly? And where should the camera be? How do you make sound as good as possible? Should I be recording in my toilet because there's better acoustics? How do I make the best at low cost or skill?
Oh, I'll definitely take that one. Rule number one, never, ever, ever, ever record from your toilet. Without a doubt, there's so many questions about then. I remember once getting into the bath, obviously fully clothed, there was no water in it, taking a photo and sending it to someone saying, haha, picture of me in the bath. The response I got back was, never send me that picture again. It wasn't me inappropriate in any way, it was just supposed to be a joke. But if you offend someone the wrong way, yeah, don't do that. What I will say, I've just looked at my own picture on the screen here and realised that the lighting was really poor. So the room that I'm in, although I've got this lovely backdrop behind me, I've got the window on that side, so the light is hitting me on this side only. And originally, before I put a little light bulb here, this side of my face was really dark. Straight away, that's a distraction to anyone looking. They can't connect me in the same way. I've literally got a small lamp, just a normal desk lamp, I've put to one side of my Mac, and now, hopefully, I hope, the lighting on that side of my face is better. That's something you can do easily. Similarly, making sure you're not in front of the window. If the window is right behind you, if you used to watch programs like The Big Breakfast, all those windows were blacked out in some way. There was darkening on them to make sure the light didn't take over. If you have a wall behind you, brilliant. The best place for me to be would have been facing this way, because all the light from the window is hitting my face head on. If you can get the maximum light on your face and the least distraction behind you, that will get you the best visual. Talking to another BBC cameraman a few months ago, he said to me, it doesn't matter how bad your video looks. If the audio is rubbish, no one will tune in. And a bit like Chloe earlier on, everyone kept saying, Chloe, we can't hear you. We can't hear what's going on. And therefore, what she was doing wasn't working, and James took over. It was the right thing to do. The key thing is the sound. Getting the sound right is much more important than anything else. If the visuals start to shrink down, you can still listen to it like the radio. We don't have places where you've got radio, where you listen to stuff by itself and the quality is good. What you don't normally have is a place where you just watch silent video all the time. TV's always got something, even if it's music in the background. People like to have quality sound, which is why I'm so pleased we've got someone here who's an expert in sound, because it makes such a difference. Brilliant.
Thanks, Steve. Somebody else on the panel?
Yeah, I totally agree with everything that Steve said. Before we set up today, I've got an LED fixture off to this side, lighting my face, and I've got a desk lamp very similar to Steve's on this side, on the other side of my face. Basically, you can get away if you've got good lighting. Even if your camera's not great, you will get decent images. The difference between broadcast-looking images and amateurish ones, generally speaking, is the lighting that makes the vast amount of difference, not necessarily the camera technology, because there's not so much of a gap these days with the quality of cameras on our smartphones. Yeah, and also sound-wise, think about the environment you're in. If you're in a very reverberant space, then you need to make sure that the microphone is as close as possible to your face, so that the ratio between the sound from your voice and the reflected sound from the room is as high as possible. So I would always do, whatever you do a test first, play it back on headphones preferably, and then you will hear exactly what the room is doing to the sound. So always do a dry run. Don't just go for it. And if you look around the images on screen today, you'll see that some people will look great and others not quite so good. And that's all down to the lighting then.
Sorry, I should buy a light. Shall we hear from Andrew, because he's my boss and we haven't heard from him for a while? Andrew Beane.
I'm not an expert in this area, so let somebody else share.
Okay. It's just nice to hear from you. Jason or Keith, anything?
Yeah, I would say a really good tool if you haven't used is Canva, canva.com. So you know when you have graphics on screen, so you have, title banners, you have graphics here, there and everywhere. If you want it to make it look pretty, you can do it on Canva, and it's completely free to use Canva. Obviously, you've got those premium features, etc. But if you export the file as a transparent image, so if you wanted like a thing at the bottom, like a name tag or something, you know, James Grier at the very bottom, you wanted the background to be, you know, just him, export it as a transparent image and essentially overlay that graphic onto your image. And essentially you'll have that graphic on your image. Now, I know I'm kind of a bit loose in how I send that, because you might be using OBS, you might be using StreamYard, whatever it may be. But essentially, if you use that Canva transparency tool, you'll be able to have graphics. And obviously, you'll be able to use them for presentations, for, you know, scripture, whatever as well. But that's a really good tool, Canva, and explore it if you've not had a look at it yet.
Fantastic, thank you. Okay, Chloe's just told me to ask about costing. Steve looks like he's about to type the answer in anyway. So any comment on costings? Let's have a really quick look. Maybe Keith, all of you on your areas. Keith, what are you thinking about? Sound. Jason, what are you thinking about? What might it cost me to use OBS, StreamYard, whatever it is? Andy, all of it. You know, talk to me about cost.
Shall I go first about sound?
Yes, please.
Just to say that we are in a very fortunate position these days, that sound stuff and video stuff is really, really cheap. So if you want to buy a device to plug in to convey the sound into your laptop, then that's going to cost you about 70 quid. Could be cheaper, could be a bit more. If you want to buy a little mixer to feed the sound into that device, then that's going to cost you about 100 quid. Could be a little bit more. Mics, you can buy a decent mic for 20 quid, a stand for 15 quid. Cables are probably going to end up being a reasonably expensive thing, but I would say that basically you can cover stuff either repurposing your PA kit or buying special stuff for really very little money, under 200 quid.
Great, thank you very much. Anyone else?
I would say yes, a lot of this software is free, but there's something to be said for actually using the paid for versions of a lot of things, which are very good and not expensive. So I wouldn't just discount things because you're paying for them, because sometimes you're getting quite a lot more for your money. And also with other kit, think about whether you're buying something to cover the current situation or whether you want to go for something long term, if that's your plan, because you don't want to spend the money twice ideally. And also, cheap stuff isn't necessarily the easiest stuff to use. And we've talked a lot about software today, things like OBS. If that frightens you, then there are hardware solutions to streaming where you just have a black box with a stop-go button on it, virtually. You don't need to know anything about computers. As long as it's all set up, you can actually stream without having to be techie at all. So if you don't want to have to invest in a second laptop to run that, then there are other options. They're not particularly cheap, but they're cheap if you think about the amount of time you spend trying to get things to work and the reliability factor. So just consider those as well.
I think the core question as well in cost is, I think in churches we have mindsets. So PCCs will sign off your mileage to travel hundreds of miles around Devon and not even raise a question. But to get a Zoom subscription or a StreamYard subscription, we can spend half an hour in a PCC meeting debating it. Somebody said recently, it's cheaper to have in a one Zoom meeting, you've paid for the cost of travelling from Newton Abbot to Exeter in petrol, in mileage. So there's something for us in opening our minds to go, investing in tech may feel expensive, but it's actually think of the money we're saving at the moment, and to just break that mentality of PAs and extravagance, whereas petrol's a life thing. Thank you, Belinda. And Belinda saying, like, yeah, our church won't pay for an internet connection. And it may be, I don't want to, this is more of an Archdeacon question, but it may be actually in some of these cases, it's saying to a member of church, you know, would you be willing to pay for this rather than taking it through PCC? But I didn't say that. Does anybody else want to come back on costings? Any of the panel want to say anything on that? Okay. Chloe's still concerned about where she is the producer. She's the BBC producer here. She's saying, where do you put the camera, iPad, phone to maximize a live stream? Is it better to have somebody operating on a tripod? She's still concerned you're going to put the position wrong. Chloe, you might want to try speaking to us, but Andrew's going to say something while we're...
Yeah, can you hear me now at all?
Yeah, we can.
Oh, wow, I'll just say it all now. My main thing is, whether you're using an iPhone, an iPad, or you've invested in a camera, is there somewhere you could position it in your average church on a sort of fixed position where you could just do it if you're, say, a vicar on your own doing a service with not much help? Or is it always better to try and get a volunteer to kind of operate it for you and have it on a tripod and move it depending what's happening in the service? I just wanted to get a bit of wisdom from the panel about that.
And when she says fixed, she means static rather than attached to a piece of church furniture, because that's a faculty.
Yeah, but you say, you know, so if we could just ask the panelists that, I think it'd be really helpful. Thanks.
Go on, Andrew, you had your hand up.
I was just going to say something about sound systems in churches, that you know, some of the best sound systems in churches are the ones where you can just switch it on and don't have to worry about it as the person leading the service, because often you're the only person in the church who knows how it works, where other churches work with a system where you have, you know, a whole queue of people who will sit on the sound desk and control all the sound bars and everything like that. And I wonder if the same thing is true for video as well. If we want to set up a system, is it worth investing in something that switches on and runs perfectly every time, rather than having to have a bank of people who have to run it if you end up being the vicar of a church where you just want to walk in and it's all up and running for you. So it's probably worth investing in setting up a system if you're in a smaller church which runs itself rather than having to have somebody run it.
Great. Anyone, Chloe's question about positioning?
Just coming back on Andrew's reply there, I would always say whatever you have in the church should be accessible to the most amount of people so that they can control it, because the most dangerous thing in the world is having one very technical person in the church who suddenly leaves and everybody else is floundering. So regardless of how techie you are at the moment, I would always go for something that can be operated at least in a simple mode, if not simply all the time, because you never know who may need to operate it. And if you're stuck there as a priest on your own running a funeral or some other sort of small service, it needs to be able to be used by that person, or even be operated in a sort of set and forget catch-all type situation where it's not quite as good as if you had an operator, but not bad. To come to Chloe's question, there's nothing more boring than watching a static image for minutes on end. So there is something to be said for having the camera move around during the service. Now, obviously, that involves maybe other people, or maybe it just involves being a bit Heath Robinson and the priest moving it around themselves to marked spots. If you have marks down, then you know what the field of view is going to be when you put the camera back down at that mark. So whatever you do, it has to work well and not cause complications. If you've got somebody there that can move it, that's brilliant, but you can't always guarantee that.
Sorry, just interrupting Chloe's question. I think there's another point on that. I've picked up on lots of clergy getting very excited by the number of views they're getting and going, I'm doing an amazing job. And I don't want to crush people, but I think there is something about lots of people can skim past what we're doing and it looks like we're getting lots of views. It doesn't mean people are enjoying what we're doing. And I think we do need to bring some camera presence to what we're doing, not to put pressure on us, but I think somebody sat doing morning prayer as they would do it in their study without looking up and engaging with the camera, without drawing people in. It doesn't take much. Chloe's done loads of training on this, about smiling, about welcoming, about bring it, as you've just said, Andy, that static image. You can look, our Toby, who's about to have to leave to go to a school lesson, has done loads of analytics for us as a church, and we get excited that we've had 100 people view something. Toby then brings some reality and goes, no, you had 100 people look at it for a second and go, I'm not watching. So we need, I don't want to crush us, I want to encourage us, but let's be realistic and look at the analytics and bring some life to what we're doing, because the worst thing we want to do is make worship of the Lord boring. Other people in response to Colin's question.
can I just come in, James, actually, and say anyone who does want any help on what I call engagement, which is all that sort of stuff, I'm really happy to kind of offer that, and I have been doing quite a lot of training on it. I guess the camera question I want to ask as well, just to put the other panelists, is if you are just using something very simple like an iPad or an iPhone at the moment, because I know a lot of us are in the position of having to do this because we'll be trying to reach people in our church buildings, but perhaps also those who are still watching at home. How far away do you need the camera from the speaker, from the priest or whoever it is, or whoever's leading a bit, in terms of picking up on sound if you haven't got an external mic, or you want to just get a good shot of them? So I guess it's a question about, can you have a fixed camera, which Andy, you've kind of helpfully said that could be very dull. But you know, where would you put the camera? If you're in a standard church, how close should it be to the person speaking, etc.?
I wouldn't even consider putting the camera far away from the person speaking, because the audio is so important that actually you have to give that priority over the image. So without some sort of external mic, then you must have the camera within about 4 feet or less of the person speaking, especially in a church building. Otherwise, what you're getting is very hard to discern, especially for those who have imperfect hearing. But you can buy some very cost-effective plug-in mics for iPhones and other types of phone straight off Amazon that will give you a close miking effect for 20 quid or so, and just improve things radically on that score. But I'll let other people answer as well.
Brilliant. Steve, just I'm going to throw to you to answer really briefly on it, but just I wonder whether we can start multitasking. If any of the panels see a question on there that you can answer, like I think Nick's question is quite specific. Yeah, you've got Belinda saying we can't afford broadband. She's not going to have 3 fixed cameras in her church. So if any of you can answer that in chat, that would be great while we keep the bigger questions going. Steve, go for it.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that in terms of camera position as well, at the moment I've got my room set up a certain way. So if I just move my Mac around a little bit, you'll see that I've got 2 chairs on a printer with a sort of shelf on it, and that is designed to make sure that the height of the camera matches my eye line as much as possible. Because when I'm close up, this appearance is what you're used to seeing on TV. If I sort of go down a little bit and I'm now looking up at the screen, the angle doesn't feel as comfortable. And most of you I know are on laptops and you're on desks, which means you've got the downward look of hello, I'm looking down at you. In terms of presenting on a TV style thing, on a TV style platform, what you want to get ideally is that camera to be roughly at eye level. Now, obviously, if you've got a very, very tall person next to a very, very short person, you might need to accommodate the 2 different heights to make sure it works for both of them. But certainly in terms of distancing, again, with sound, although sound is incredibly important, you've got to work out what you want to see on the screen. Are you in a church building because you want to be able to see everything out there, in which case you will have to come up with an audio solution with a separate microphone and input. If, however, you want close-ups of what's going on and be able to see things close up, that's not needed.
Brilliant. Thank you, Steve. Okay, just another point off the back of Steve's, and then I'm going to ask you about CCL and performance licensing, music licensing. There's some great stuff out there about where your eyes are, because we're used to people looking down at scripts, and many of us have our script to the left or the right or above, and that just can feel a little bit weird psychologically. So if you look down at your script and up, or even better, if you can have your script at the same place as your camera, that really helps. Thank you, Andrew, for challenging Belinda's church. So we want to be legal. CCLI, performance, what's the deal? Am I allowed to stream songs and stuff? What do I have to do? Really quick answers, please, would be great. And if nobody else answers, the Archdeacon is going to have to give an authoritative legal statement.
I'll take that one. I phoned up CCLI 2 months ago and said to them, I'm thinking about streaming something, what do I need to do? They told me everything I needed to do to sign up as a church. They told me everything I needed to do to sign up that legally kept me safe. And they also told me what I didn't need to sign up to. So they weren't trying to con me out of money. They were saying, actually, that thing there, you don't need it. You're not going to use that. You won't put that in your bundle. So if anything, if you want to try anything, the best thing to do is to phone up CCLI and ask them. They are the experts at this. And yes, we can say, get yourself a PRS license or whatever else might be out there, but they will actually go step by step through with you. They will guide you through the process. They won't charge you to do that, completely free, until they give you the bill at the end for the actual licenses that you need.
Brilliant. Jason, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, pre-lockdown, I'm not going to lie to you, it was a minefield. It was the most confusing thing ever. If you try to go, so they have made it much clearer. During lockdown, they actually brought out a new license. CCLI brought a new license out. So yeah, Stu's spot on really. And it is a question to have a look at line, because there are lots of, well, not lots, but there are multiple options. You don't need to get everything. They tried to make it cost effective on PRS. Just how we got set up, we got PRS license. It's based on the number of congregation members. So they make it very cost effective. They're not trying to con you out members of money. So yeah, honestly, it's just the main was the CCOI and PRS. Simple answer.
Brilliant.
But
go on, were you going to say something more?
No, I would say just phone them up and they recommend which one.
Great. And Andrew has just put a link there which tells you Church of England's legal advice on it. Also, just on somebody, Diana's just asked. My understanding is if you're streaming on behalf of your church, even if you're doing it from your personal account, your church is streaming. So you should be fine. Question, in case, while Chloe's bringing up the next question, I've picked up loads of people using Zoom, and also we've had it with StreamYard. The music goes bad. So it sounds great when we're putting it out, but you're there on a Sunday and it's weird. I'm not musical, but the guitar's lost any resonance, so it clips it. What do I have to do to make sure that the music, which is what we're missing in physicality, sounds as good as possible on whatever platform?
So
Andy. Oh, Jason. Yeah. Andy first, then Jason.
Oh, okay. Yeah, on Zoom, it's not designed for music really. It's a conferencing platform, so it's never going to be great. But if you go onto YouTube and search for Zoom settings for music or something similar, there are a number of processes you can turn off, such as the echo cancellation, and there's a thing called turn on original sound, which is what I use on a Sunday morning. It's better, but it's still not fantastic. I know playing guitar through it sounds like you've got some sort of phaser or chorus going on a little bit. But I would always do a test run, record yourself and play it back just to get your balance right anyway, because you can actually enter a Zoom call on your own as a solo person, record that, and then listen back to it. But the problem is it does fluctuate anyway. That's all you can do with Zoom, really. With other sorts of streaming, you should be able to get perfect sound.
Great. Okay, sorry, Jason, you were going to say something?
Yeah, so spot on. Under audio, if you go to the advanced settings, you can disable a load of audio compression and load of audio stuff like it does. So if you basically disable them, this was a couple of weeks back, loads of churches saying that miraculously all the audio was much better. So it was awful, and so but then it seems to be much better now if you disable that. Also, if you do use something like StreamYard, if you click disable audio processing, it's like the musician is in the room. You know, it really is crystal clear sound, really great. Obviously, if you get a little device, so if someone's got an electric guitar or guitar, if you get a little device for your computer, you can obviously plug that into your computer, and obviously you've got much richer sound, not just coming from your mic. But certainly just disable that audio processing. That's what you want to get rid of.
Anything quick from you, Keith? Nope. Okay, great. Next one. So how are you coping with the idea of, as a panel, moving services? We can do services from church. We can't sing. How do we manage that? And how do we keep online community going at the same time? So the balance of virtual and not virtual. What's your wisdom? That's a massive question.
I know at Rediscover, so we've been doing online for a long time, and yeah, we get it. You know, that there will be people who have it's interesting. We had 7 people become members of the church who've applied to be members. They never walked through the door of the building before. They applied to be members, and I guess seeing as online is missional. So right now we are going to. I know Church of England can look a bit different, but we're going to go to our church building. The worship team are broadcasting from there. We can be broadcasting from church. But equally, we have been for the last couple of weeks having people at home and having people at church building through StreamYard, having that multiple kind of different locations sort of setup really. But yeah, I guess the key thing about this is as well, the running order is really interesting. Like our running order from a physical service to an online service, they're completely different. We've been, Nicky Gumbel said this, he said that for HDB services in London, they've thrown out the traditional running order. They say, okay, having 4 songs at the beginning just doesn't work. They start off with 1 song, they have this, and this. So so keeping that in mind, actually the running order, what works online to what doesn't work online, stickability. But certainly we're going to have everyone, we're going to be doing everything at church, really, having a minimal camera team there and making it happen, really. But
Brilliant. Thank you, Jason. Someone else?
Well, we meet in a local school normally, but for the last few months we've been doing worship from our living room, and somebody else has been doing the words from their living room, and everybody else has been on Zoom at the same time. When we get access back to the school again, we may have the band in the school, but majority of the congregation will probably still be watching on Zoom. We've changed our running order a little bit in that we would have much shorter blocks of worship, because actually if you just get someone effectively singing at you for 15 minutes, it's not necessarily a great experience. So normally we'd only have maybe 2 songs in a row maximum at the moment. Although we do, because we use Zoom and we have got complete feedback from everybody in the church, we do have a situation sometimes where we do a song and then we open all the mics, or people put their hands up and someone will open a mic. So we have interaction in that way. So actually we found that we get more interaction now than we've ever had before, because we're all looking at each other. The mic in a sense is open to everybody.
Brilliant, thank you. Just while letting the next couple answer, fantastic, Tony, thank you for your question. Can the panelists put the links to your church's stream services in the chat, because then we can check out whether what you've been talking about actually is the reality on a Sunday. Does anybody else want to say? Andrew, you were about to say something, I think, on the virtual versus physical.
All I was going to say is work collaboratively. So in mission communities, decide if there's just one church that needs to live stream or do a recorded service, not every single church in the mission community, or maybe even work across deaneries or other areas, so that you kind of have key churches that perhaps stream stuff if it's going to be a real complication for people. So work collaboratively, I would have suggested.
Chloe. Sorry, Keith. Go on, Keith first, Chloe.
I'm just going to say, I wondered if I could pose a question and ask whether people are considering rearranging the furniture in church and constricting the usually quite a large area that is covered in a conventional service, so that it works better for the camera angles that we were talking about before, whether we can actually compress the action in the church into a smaller area. Is that something that people are considering?
Can we just hold that, Chloe, answer your first question, and then we'll come back to that, Keith?
Yeah, well, basically, if you can all hear me, obviously that's going to be constrained by the kind of restrictions around the coronavirus and how chairs and spacing have to happen anyway, which I know we probably won't go too much into now, but there is guidance for that on the Church of England website. So, but it's a very good point to say, given that there are certain restrictions around spacing, etc. in church, how you could also perhaps use that as an opportunity to, if you are live streaming, to maximise it. So you are going to have, obviously people spaced out. I'm quite interested in the question of singing. We can't sing at the moment in our church services in church, apart from maybe having one person. So I'd be interested to hear from the panellists what they think is the most engaging way of having a physical church service, which is also being live streamed. Is it playing in a music video? Is it just not having any songs? What would you be imagining would be good?
Sorry, just before you answer that, I personally, and I know it disagrees with what somebody said before, I think the premium is we don't live stream our physical services. I think if there's a way that you can do 2 options on what Jason just said, that you have a live stream service that you're putting out, just like we have an 8 o'clock, a 10 o'clock and a 6:30 service. If you have your physical in church and then a different service you're putting out live, because the danger of people feeling like the poor relation, the danger of poor audio, and as Belinda said earlier, the physicality of movement in a service is different if it's going on screen than what you're doing there. And as Andy said, I think people's attention span is totally different on screen. So I think if you can do an hour at church, you can only do half an hour on screen. I know places like Rediscover, if you go and watch what Jason's church does, you've got to remember they have state-of-the-art tech and they're set up for this. We are Anglicans without that. So I think the dream scenario is we do something that's really good on screen and we do something that's really good in person. The other thing, which coming to Chloe's question, is you can still sing your hearts out on screen because we're hoping people are in their living room singing along, whereas they can't in the church. So you may need to pitch it differently. But Chloe's question, how are people planning on making up for the fact that you aren't allowed to sing in church?
I think this is a really good moment to talk about persecuted church, because there's a form of worship that I've encountered a few times, which I find fascinating, which is often used by people in countries where being a Christian and going to church isn't acceptable, which is where you literally think of the words and you position your body to point towards God as you worship. Now, this means that there's no singing involved as such, and there's nothing else. I'm not suggesting this should be done every single week, but as a way of getting your mind into the idea that you don't have to sing out loud to be able to worship, it's a really nice way of relating to people in other countries and also pointing yourself. I remember being at a big event called Wildfires last year, and I was in the congregation, in the audience, worshipping away, and God suddenly said, now stop singing, keep going. And it was one of these challenges in my own head to go, hold on a minute, so you want me to stop moving my mouth, stop moving and actually point my entire being to you. And as I did that, I suddenly realised that although my head had been singing, my heart wasn't singing. My heart wasn't worshipping. And as I repositioned myself to worship without singing, certainly as a worship leader and a singer, it was a huge challenge, but also just felt really powerful. So if I can encourage you to do that, please do.
Okay, if any of the other panelists want to comment on that question before I move on to the next one. Okay. What I did want to say as well is that we're all moving, a lot of us who haven't done live streaming before much in church, so sort of Jason aside, are moving into a new period now where it is going to be a certain amount of trial and error and having a go. And obviously I know what James said is it's better to have something bespoke for physical service, maybe something bespoke not. But if you do feel that you really want to connect everybody together by doing it live streaming from your church, which is what obviously this webinar is about, then I think there's going to be a certain amount of trial and error and seeing what works. And, you know, don't worry if it's not perfect the first week. That's what I wanted to say. It's just, as Jason said, we don't have to be kind of, you know, multi-screen, you know, we're going to try different things. Some will work, some won't. And what I'm keen as a communications team is that we keep sharing the knowledge and keep talking to each other about what's worked for us and what hasn't, whether we're in a, you know, a large city church or a really small rural church with no internet. The final question I kind of wanted to ask as we come to the end is, we're going to have a bit of trial and error time now, but I wanted to ask the panelists that in order for us to really use this as a missional opportunity and really kind of engage, I guess, with the 21st century in terms of technology, what would be the one or two things that you would invest, I guess, time, energy and money into going forward? So once we're out of this kind of hybrid period that we're going into, what would you suggest churches could put their money and effort into? And perhaps go to Andy first of all for that.
That's a big question. Thanks for that. I think you have to go with where your vision is. I think if you need to get a vision for how you want to move things forward, there's no point in just jumping on a bandwagon because it's there. If you feel that as a church that you want to carry on offering a sort of a streaming and in-person service, then you probably need to get a vision for how you want to deliver that in the best possible way, and in a way that's manageable, because you can end up with something that takes so much energy to produce every week. It has to be something that isn't too far away from your sort of the main offering you do. So the more you can reuse for your live stream, or if you just live stream the whole thing, then it's not much more effort than actually coming to church and doing a normal Sunday service. So just I would say, think of the long term and where you want to be and what you want to do before you invest in any sort of technology.
That's very wise. That's brilliant. Thank you. Jason, what about you?
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt, would be Facebook advertising. So we spend quite a lot of money and resource on Facebook advertising. So people across Exeter right now are getting Facebook ads from Rediscover about our upcoming Alpha course. we did an alpha course, and we had 40 people signed up entirely from Facebook ads. We do our, we've got an advert running right now about Sunday service entirely from Facebook ads, and it's trial and error Facebook ads, working out the copy, the imagery, how to make that really engaging. But certainly, if you've never explored Facebook ads before, you can do it from from £1 a day, and you can run a campaign for it. But certainly, in a really interesting local village, with an interesting, local community, how you can, reach people, forget, paper advertising, all that sort of stuff. People are on Facebook, right? And it's reaching them where they are. So that's a really great mission opportunity. It's a really good, before students come to Exeter, we run a Facebook ad campaign directed at new students. So new students who sign up to a degree at Exeter University say, hey, you come to Exeter in September, interested in coming to a local church, here's a link to our live stream. And we have a lot of new students, never come to Exeter before, come to our live stream, and when they come here, arrive in person through that Facebook advertising. So have a look at it, explore it, use it, particularly for alpha and stuff like that. It's a great resource.
Thanks, Jason. That's great. And not what I was expecting you to say, so I like that. You've gone on something else. And Keith, what would you be putting effort and money into if you had it, or investing for the future?
Yeah, well, as I said before, I think that I don't think sound is going to be a huge investment, but I would like people to invest the attention on sound, I think, and if possible, well, I'll put some notes up on the Exeter Comms Facebook page, which might sort of give people some better clues. But yeah, I would say please don't neglect sound, and do give it the time as well as looking after the pictures.
And there's just one follow-up question, actually, Keith, just because Benedict asked it, and I'm not sure if you've seen it in chat. If you've got a church sound system, a PA system, is it possible to kind of plug it into the camera you're recording on? That might be a little techie. You may want to answer that in chat, or post it on the Facebook group, but it's a question probably others may have as well.
Right.
So maybe put it out in the chat. Is that all right?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks, thank you. And Andrew, Beane, what would you be investing in if you had a pot of money that the diocese had given you?
I totally agree with what Jason said about Facebook. I mean, I think that's key. It's where most people are on. It's the platform that lots of people use. So I totally agree with that. The other thing is, I would probably suggest going and investing some money and talking to a firm that does this really well. So obviously we've got a commercial company here this afternoon, but I would definitely speak to a company and get advice. Don't try and do it yourself.
Sorry, Steve, where are you? Oh, you moved in my screen. What about you?
I think firstly, the first thing I want to do is get a haircut and focus on that, because this is getting ridiculous now. Having curly hair during lockdown has not been fun. But more importantly, broadband. For me personally, having some sort of broadband, some way of connecting in churches, especially when I'm visiting in different churches, some who have it, some who don't. Being able to invest in having an internet connection in your church opens up a huge number of possibilities, even for outreach and the ability to show things in your church on a regular basis beyond lockdown. It's a long-term investment.
That's great, thank you. I think I've just sort of asked everyone now, and I'm sure many of you have got your own sort of top tips of things that you've invested in or you've got which you found helpful. So either post them in the chat, or if you are a member of the Diocese of Exeter Facebook Comms and Digital group, that is a great place to either ask questions or share knowledge, and I'm really keen that we do help each other to do that. So I think we've basically covered most of the issues. The one issue that I've not gone into yet, because I don't think any of our panelists massively have a big knowledge about it, but do stick your hands up if you do, is the issue of kind of safeguarding and things that showing children or showing people in live streams. The Church of England has a few good blogs on this. I'll go to James in a minute, actually, because you're waving your hand. There's a few good blogs on this, which I will post. I'm going to email you all some of the details from today afterwards. So I'll post those as well. But James, did you want to comment on that?
Just to say, you do need consent for under 18s, written parental consent to be showing photo or video of young people. But also our safeguarding team, as Chloe said, just if in doubt, ask them before rather than afterwards.
Yeah, there are some specific questions about, which are great things, like using a Zoom group for a choir, or potentially live streaming a choir rehearsal to those that couldn't be there, etc. for that kind of specific stuff, our safeguarding team is really, really good for the diocese. So if you're a member of the diocese, I would get in touch with them over the specifics, because they'll put you right. But as I said, there's some general blogs about, you know, the rules around consent. If you're live streaming a church service, those people that may be included in it accidentally, or children, and those appearing in it. So I'll point you in those directions, because a lot of advice is kind of quite specific. But if you, as I say, do you have questions, either go to our diocese safeguarding team or email the communications team, and we can kind of help you with that. So I think that was, oh, someone's put something really helpful up, Andrew Beane, thank you for that, posting that in the chat, about the church's handbook.
And I know in our context, when you enter the door, there's a massive sign that says this is recorded. But there's also, very importantly, an opt-out. So for people who go on the balcony or the very back of the auditorium, we say that's opt-out. So, you know, it's just making sure it's really clear so there's no nasty surprises that they don't want to appear. So just making that really, really clear through signage.
And it is really important, not just from a safeguarding children in terms of images on the internet, but for children in care, adopted children, things like that, which we may not be aware of. So you do need to have that signage or that consent.
It is vital, yeah. I've heard, so that is really important. And if we need to, we can run a separate session on just this subject, actually, which, you know, if we get enough questions, I'll set something up. So we're coming to an end now. I want to thank our panelists so much for taking part and sharing your wisdom and knowledge. It's really lovely to hear people who know what they're talking about, rather than someone like me trying to make it up. And thank you for those who've taken part today and listened. And I hope it's been the right level of information. But as I say, if you've got questions, email the communications email or post it on the Facebook group that we've got. This session has been recorded, so once we've got the kind of link to the recording, we'll send that out as well, either for you to share with anyone who couldn't make it today, or just so you can sit and listen and take everything in again, because I know there's been a lot of information going forward. And I just wondered if I could ask Andrew Beane, would you be able to just close in prayer for us? Because I think technology is something that does need prayer over it, and it'll be great, as we're all going into, some of us, uncharted territory with technology and live streaming, that we just pray about it collectively as a group as well.
So Heavenly Father, we give you thanks for technology and for the way that it can be used to share your good news. And we remember that whilst you may not have feet here on earth, you have our Facebook pages. Whilst you do not have hands, you have our Instagram accounts. And whilst you do not have legs to walk towards people, you have our web pages to reach out to people. So I pray that we use the technology that you have given us to reach out to people and to share good news with them. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you so much, everyone, for taking part. Thank you for James for leaping in and fielding the questions, and all of you. And do stay in touch, because it'd be great to kind of keep touching base over this. So thanks very much. Have a good afternoon.